She's a single mother from one of the most persecuted minority groups in U.S. history. Deb Haaland is a left-leaning Democrat campaigning to become the first Native American woman in the U.S. Congress. She's an outspoken critic of President Trump, and she's hoping to win a seat in the House of Representatives.
So I think if we win back the House, we have an opportunity to hold the Republicans' feet to the fire.
The community activist could bring a new voice from New Mexico to the Capitol, as never-before-seen numbers of women and Native Americans run for office. So what's behind her potentially historic campaign? And can Deb Haaland set the course for other Americans who felt sidelined to follow her lead?
Sexism can be extremely subtle in some ways, and I'm sure that a lot of women face this. You know, when you ask a woman to run, you have to ask her 7 times before she will say yes, but you only have to ask a man once.
This year, a record number of women no longer need to be asked.
Hello.
It could be a small step toward equal representation in a country where only 1 in 5 lawmakers is a woman.
Well, there are definitely more women running now than ever. There are hundreds more women who are running in every office from the top of the ballot to the bottom across the country. And yes, I absolutely want to make sure that women get elected here in New Mexico. You know, as far as I'm concerned, if I want Native women or women of color to run, I have to be willing to help them get out there.
And it's not just women. Native Americans are also seeking office in 2018 in previously unseen numbers. The government recognizes 573 tribes, making up some 2% of the U.S. population. Native Americans have faced a long history of oppression, including the government taking their lands and stripping them of their traditions. Today, they still face higher poverty rates than the national average, and 1 in 3 says they have experienced racism. That's why so many are angry to see Trump use what they consider a racial slur, using a historical Native American figure's name as an insult when he calls one of his political opponents Pocahontas. Trump also has shrunk the size of protected monuments they consider to be sacred, saying the federal government can no longer control those resources.
And guess what? They're wrong. Public lands will once again be for public use.
That's the kind of policy that has convinced Haaland supporters to open their wallets at this fundraiser in Taos, New Mexico.
It's a voice that's never been included before. It should have been a long time ago, but now we have a chance.
Haaland is one of a handful of Indigenous women running for Congress this year from both sides of the aisle. And she's likely the one with the best chance of success.
The pleasure's mine. Thank you for coming.
To hearing what you have to say.
Thank you.
And for you being the first.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. We're gonna work hard to make it happen.
Somebody's got to make something happen in that.
I agree.
That cesspool.
Thank you so
There are already 2 Native Americans in Congress, both Republican men from Oklahoma. But the Democrats who have been inspired to run say they've felt insulted and marginalized by the Trump administration. Haaland supporters want her to help wrest power from the Republican-controlled Congress and stand up to a president who's been accused of sexism and even assault.
Thank you.
Is that okay?
Thank you very much. And I think that the earth needs to start changing to the woman power instead of this aggressive man power. And I don't know if Deb is a mother, but she's kind of a mother figure, and mother figures are a lot more tender and nurturing and understanding than the man energy.
She is a mother, one who once had to feed her daughter using food stamps. Now she wants to set an example for future generations of women so they don't have to do the same.
When I think about, you know, young Native women, these 2 beautiful young girls here who maybe in their lifetime will actually see a Native woman in the Congress, whereas, you know, someone like me, there was no one that I could go to say, how did you do it, and how can we make this happen?
But can the 57-year-old lawyer bring major change to U.S. politics? Her supporters want to know whether she can stand up to the president if she wins.
Of course, the number one question I get asked is, will you vote to impeach Donald Trump? Right? And so I think if we win back the House, we have an opportunity to hold the Republicans' feet to the fire, right? Because we'll be in the majority.
After a morning of fundraising, the team has returned to its headquarters. Once inside the campaign office, Haaland takes a rare quiet moment to look through photos of her family.
And an early photo of me and my daughter. She was probably, I don't know, 7 or 8 here. And my grandmother. This was, I must have been in college during this time. I was at her house, and she was sitting in a rocking chair.
She once lived with her grandmother in Laguna Pueblo, a reservation some 70 kilometers west of Albuquerque.
So this arrowhead was given to me. It was found up near the Taos area. I carry it with me all the time because it was used by our ancestors, and it's important for me.
For her, it's a source of pride and protection, and she says she'll carry it with her while in Congress if she wins the race. Although her chances are good in a strongly Democratic district, Haaland's staff aren't taking anything for granted.
Also build relationships.
She actually embodies the values that she has, and sometimes you don't always find that with everybody. Probably you do too.
That's why they're spending long days working to help her win. Getting donations to finance her campaign is always on their minds.
So it takes a lot of hours on the phone to make sure that we're actually connecting with the donors that we need to connect with to raise the money.
Congressional campaigns were always having to raise money. That is just a fact, right? Campaigns are expensive.
With no time to lose, they're off to the next event, making use of every minute to convince supporters to host more fundraisers.
Okay, it's at Deb's house?
Yeah, it's at Deb's.
Sawmill Road.
Yeah, and then Charlotte called me back, and she's gonna be there.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you again, both of you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Lots. Bye.
Yeah, continue the good fight.
Okay. Bye.
Okay. All right. Bye.
I mean, I hate to be pushy like that.
They're headed to a union meeting of postal workers to try and get their support.
I'm sure Anne will understand. I don't know when her event is.
And they're braving a storm on their way.
9 million emails. Oh, wow. Yes.
I mean, when you think about letter carriers delivering mail every day, who knows our district better than they do, right?
No one.
Yeah. So I definitely want to make that point. Tap into the fact that we appreciate their expertise. There are certain things.
And she believes she's found a way to reach that audience.
If you were a letter carrier for our house, my dad would have left you a 6-pack of beer in a paper bag for your Christmas present or something like that, right? He felt it was important to recognize, the folks that make our lives better.
Haaland hopes to convince the postal workers to turn out on Election Day. And she's making her case based on her frustration with the president's Republican Party.
They're worried about their re-election, so they're not going to start a fight with Trump, even though they know he's extremely dangerous to this country.
People want to know whether she can do anything about Trump if she wins. But she's trying to temper expectations. Even if she goes to Congress, she alone won't be able to get him out.
I will be ready to vote for impeachment. The only thing is that we need 2/3 of the Senate to make that happen. Cross our fingers. I think we can definitely win back the House.
But for her supporters, it's enough to have an outspoken minority voice in power who will represent them.
And to know that she's a Native American, for me, I'm Hispanic. I want somebody that is of a different ethnic to start getting these offices and to show that they want to make a difference in our community.
Haaland represents the progressive wing of her party. as Democrats grapple with what message will bring voters to the polls in November. She's taken a more leftist position on issues like immigration, abortion, and legalizing marijuana. And she is especially concerned with the environment.
That there is, I heard this on NPR yesterday, there are 5 of these bags full of plastic in our oceans for every foot of coastline in the world. So we're ruining our oceans with plastic. And so I almost think that if we allow this to blow around in New Mexico and it lands in the Rio Grande River, there's a chance it could go into the ocean. So I pick it up.
Haaland chalks up her climate policies in part to memories of her grandmother's pueblo, at a time when there was no electricity or running water.
Thank you so much. What is your name?
Tanya.
Hi, Tanya.
Hi.
To me, that's kind of where I learned to be very conservative with our natural resources, because when you're the one that has to go haul the water in buckets and bring them back to the house, you try to make it last as long as you can.
She's promoted solar energy and keeping fossil fuels in the ground.
How are you?
And her message of protecting nature is one that resonates here.
You can tell there's a dry patch even up there. It's very dry this year. It's climate change.
To save this place, Deb Haaland is drawing on a long history of defiance to fight for her community and for her moment in the sun.